South Africa currently has a military delegation visiting the army in Moscow. Today in London, Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky meeting with British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Let's discuss this with our correspondent Olly Barratt in London. Hello, Olly. So what came out of today's meeting between the two leaders?
Quite a lot, really, in terms of military support for Ukraine. The UK saying that it's going to be supplying the Ukrainians with hundreds of long-range air defence missiles, but also long-range attack drones. And so that is going to be the next round of military support that is provided to the Ukrainians by the UK. So those were the specifics that came out of today's meetings, but there were also broader pledges from the UK government too. Rishi Sunak saying a couple of things. One of those is that the UK Prime Minister is saying that he's making it very clear to Vladimir Zelensky that the UK's support for Ukraine is there for the long term. It's not suddenly going to drop away now. There's not going to be any fatigue because of the length of the conflict in the country. And the other thing that is linked to that is that Rishi Sunak is saying that he's going to be making calls on the international stage to try and make sure that many of Ukraine's allies pledge exactly the same. He's going to try and make sure that the UK is trying to persuade some of those countries that are supporting the Ukrainians that they also need to make sure that their support is retained for the long term and again doesn't start to slip away. So some broad pledges from Rishi Sunak to Volodymyr Zelensky in their talks, but also those specific further pledges of military support as well, and crucially a further discussion about fighter jets. Now, we haven't suddenly seen a pledge from the UK that it's going to be sending fighter jets to the Ukrainians. Indeed, the Ukrainians actually want fighter jets that the UK doesn't have any of, F-16 fighter jets. It's not something that the RAF, the Royal Air Force, actually uses. So the UK won't be supplying jets, but the UK Prime Minister pledging again today that the UK will train Ukrainian pilots to fly the type of jets that they might eventually be supplied by other countries, by other militaries around the world.
And then a very interesting comments and quite controversial coming from the Home Secretary, Sunak Braverman, who is basically saying that there are a lot of immigrants in England doing the jobs that Britons don't want to do, that this could risk the national character, and that Britons are forgetting how to do things themselves. What exactly is she getting at?
Yeah, and she says, Sunak Braverman, that it's not racist to say the things that she is saying. She is trying to set out a position where she believes it's perfectly valid in political discourse to say that it's her view that immigration is too high and that people who are in the UK already should be being trained up to do some of the jobs that in recent years have been done often by immigrants. So she's citing examples of things like lorry drivers and fruit pickers. And what she is saying is that the UK shouldn't rely on ever-growing immigration to try and fill some of those important roles in the economy like those, that the UK should be training people up here in the UK who are already here to do some of those jobs and to therefore move away from some of the labour market shortages that we're currently seeing. Now, they were very controversial comments in the way that she made them, but we think that one of the reasons that she is setting out this language in this speech that she's given to a Conservative conference today, because at the moment there is a bit of a division within the UK government's cabinet. It's thought that there are some ministers who believe that to solve some of those labour market shortages, to plug some of those gaps for people like lorry drivers, for roles like lorry drivers, to keep the supply chain moving, some ministers think you should actually ease immigration for some of those specific employment needs. Sunak Braverman is trying to set out her stall today as the Home Secretary and say, no, that's the wrong way to go about this. We shouldn't rely on immigration. We should try and train the workforce that is already here to do some of those roles that we need doing. So it's a very live debate at the moment within government, right at the very top of government, and that's what Home Secretary Sunak Braverman has been trying to set out her stall on today.
All right, thank you so much. Olly Barratt coming to us live from London. Now up ahead.